Hey, tourpreneurs, it's Mitch Bach, and just a quick note before we begin today's episode. Tourpreneur is currently sponsored by Google. We're thankful for their support of our community, and we are offering with them a completely free course helping you unlock the power and potential of Google's Things to Do program, which is specifically helping tour operators add their tours to Google in new ways that gives you new exposure and more direct bookings. To learn more, go to tourpreneur.com/Google. And as always, show notes, more resources, links to our newsletter, our business coaching community, and so much more are available on tourpreneur.com. Now to the episode.
The way I look at this is I don't see travel and tourism having any issue with demand. Demand is going to be a constant and it's going to be growing. So we're in an industry that gets growth by default because of global population changes and economic changes. So demand is baked into the system at X% growth per year. It's how do we manage that growth? Now, as tour operators, particularly ones who are operating in places who are under the stress of over demand, we actually can make a big impact because we can change the experiences. We design the experiences on the ground and then retail them in many ways to the consumer. But often the consumer will buy what you put in front of them if it's put in the right content, in the right context, again, with the right explanation. So tour operators are actually right at the forefront of this, of being able to redesign experiences that will make the visitors' experience different and hopefully better, and also make the residents and the people who live there's experience different. Good day, tourpreneurs, and today I would like to welcome Tony Carne. Tony is broadcasting from down south in Melbourne, Australia. So great to have someone from Australia where it's winter there. I'm in sunny Scotland, but apparently Tony has a temperature that's higher than my summer in Scotland at the moment. So welcome to Tourpreneur, Tony. Tony has a background in travel that goes back over 20 years. He's currently the Chief Operating Officer of Air Guides. He's a columnist for Skift, that big publication in travel. So he's writing for that. He was an entrepreneur in residence at Antler. He's an advisor to the industry. He co-founded an Egyptian food shop at some point. I think that's correct. There must be a story behind.
There's a story
behind an Egyptian street food shop somewhere. And then a big one, I think he spent 17 or 18 years at Intrepid Travel, which is the biggest tour operator in the world, if I remember the numbers correctly, where he ended up as managing director as Urban Adventures. Have I got all that sort of correct?
Pretty good. I'm glad there was some tourism in there at the end.
Yes, that little bit of 17 years at Intrepid. I just dropped.
Try and get a little bit of relevance in. And can talk falafel for hours should anyone require it.
Falafel for hours, talking or eating falafel for hours.
Bit of both. Yes, just definitely go the Egyptian style. Fava bean is the way.
Cool. So the reason we've got Tony in today is to just a discussion about the changing face of tourism from what he's seeing from down under, what I'm seeing from up here. And we've obviously been through a pandemic. We've all had huge changes in our industry, but we're all coming out of that now. We're all looking at the future, but things are not the same. Things are probably never going to be back to the same. Obviously, we don't want another pandemic. It's always a possibility. We don't want another one, but things are changing. We can feel it in our gut. We can sense it. Things are happening, things are changing. So we're just going to have a chat about some of the changes, particularly that's impacting tour operators.
Hello to Peter's dog.
Yeah, that's my dog. So I'm just going to kill the dog. So this is the dog that was just interrupting our podcast. He's blind, so he's not looking at you. He's 100% blind. And he's called Guinness because of a little drink that I like drinking.
What a dog.
That's Tony from Australia, dog.
Good on you, little mate.
Yeah. He's now thrown in bed. So let's start off with what I see as the biggest challenge in tourism and travel going forward, Tony. Environmental impact and sustainability. It's something I am not an expert on at all, but I can feel the change. I can feel it. I can see it happening. I have concerns that the industry is not going to react to it well. And I think the governments of the world will start regulating the hell out of tourism going forward, because the industry is not getting its act together and doing things proactively rather than just waiting. And I know reasons for this. We're coming out of a pandemic where balance sheets are bust. People have heard me say before, there's a dash for cash, and operators are desperate to get cash in, just get back to what 2019 was. And we see it in the media all the time, trying to get 2019 numbers, trying to get 2019 numbers. It's basically get cash in at all costs. Whereas during the pandemic, we were all talking about doing things differently. So big subject. But for me, going forward, if we take a 10-year view, 15-year view, 20-year view, this is probably the overriding subject that's going to come up time and time again, not just from the industry, not just from regulators onto the industry, but eventually the consumers. I'm not saying the consumers are leading it at the moment. I don't think they are, but eventually the consumer pressure will be there as well. So let's start with the good stuff. What do you see good from the tourism industry with regards environmental stuff and sustainability? Because there is good stuff, there is good stories.
Totally. And look, and as you say, look, it's a massive issue and a complex issue. And I also am not an expert on it, but it's something that's kind of been part of my personal DNA, and it was obviously a big part of internally at Intrepid, who pioneered responsible tourism. It was ecotourism, whatever you want to term it back in the day. So it's kind of always been with me. And look, the good stuff is a great place to start. And this audience, the small tour operator, they're at the good end of it. They are in general, working locally, employing locally, keeping money in communities, and in touch with the communities around them. And so they've got a really good feel for what the local vibe is around tourism's impact in a community. Now, that's not necessarily on the environmental side. There's a inevitable conundrum between travel and carbon emission. If we want to get people from a long way away to where we are, there is an inevitable cost in terms of carbon emission for that. Now, will us as a human race inevitably say that that's something that we're willing to accept because the benefits of travel for us personally, with our personal growth and for our economies is worth it? I think inevitably that will bear out. But there is a small risk, and you say it's not consumer led at the moment, but particularly I think the younger demographic highly focused on this issue, and will be thinking about traveling way different to perhaps their parents did, and even the generation that are mass travelers now will be traveling probably in a different way to what we've seen in the past. And that will be what this change is that comes out of the period that we're coming out of now. But other good stuff. Look, we've seen a declaration to Glasgow, where tourism, basically signed a declaration declaring a climate emergency that was, led by the tour operator side of the travel industry. Big kudos to Alex Narracott from Much Better Adventures, who was kind of the driving force behind that, and all the initial signatories of that, and the ongoing work of people to not only sign up to the pledge but also to write down their plans. And I encourage people to go and have a look. Just Google tourism signs a declaration towards a climate emergency, and you'll get the site there, and you can look through the plans that some of the bigger companies have put in place to mitigate their own emission output, and maybe there's something from that even at the micro level, companies could look at and learn from in their own operations, and take those first steps in minimising the impact that they are having.
When I think back to my own operations, I have to put my hands up here, and 20 odd years of operating, our environmental and sustainability projects weren't in the top 5 or the top 10 things that we did. They just weren't, and I have to put my hands up for that. Having said that, we were in adventure travel, therefore by default a lot of the stuff that we were doing was pretty good anyway. Like, we were leaving a lot more money in destination than other types of tourism. But when I eventually got round to writing policies for the business, being Scottish, who we have a tendency to look after the pennies and the pounds, I always started with economic pros and cons initially. Before looking at the environmental and social issues, I always started with economic issues. Now, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I just think it's when we're communicating to tourism paid professionals and tour operators coming out of a very difficult, probably, hopefully, the most difficult time in their lives from running a business, because I really hope it doesn't get this difficult again. I think if we start with the economic issues around it or opportunities, we have more chance of moving the industry if we focus on the economic things first rather than necessarily the social or the environmental. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the economic stuff can be really simple. Do you invest where your business operates, or do you have a structure where a lot of the cash you're generating goes elsewhere? And we all know cases in tourism where it's obvious the money that is generated is recycled into the system. And we all know cases where the money that is generated is extracted for the system. So it's a very simple question. Do you invest in the area, in the community you're in? Do you contribute in that area to the resources that you're using? So the simple thing we used to do, we used the river a lot. That's simple. We were taking people down rivers. Therefore, we had a responsibility to keep that river clean. Every year, we'd send teams down to clean, get all the gunge out, get all the stuff that rivers just attract out there. So it's, if you're using a resource, have you got a policy to keep that resource, whatever it is? It doesn't necessarily need to be a natural resource, but have you got a policy to maintain that resource for everyone, not just for your use, but the use of everyone? Hiring staff, one of the biggest issues we have in tourism at the moment is hiring staff. Obviously, if you hire local versus hiring international, you have a bigger impact in the local environment. I've got to say, I was guilty of hiring international a lot rather than hiring local. Just the type of tours we wanted a wider range of expertise and knowledge and accents and people from around the world. But in today's world, there should be a higher focus in hiring locally. And your supply chain, again, we all, even as small operators, we have supply chains. We have ecosystems that we all discovered how critical they were to us when they all collapsed during COVID. Your bus companies, your restaurants, and your accommodation suppliers, your extra guides that you need, this whole food supplier, whole ecosystem is absolutely critical to the economic infrastructure of tourism. Now, when you map that and lay that out, you can come up with economic benefits for one, your business, but two, for the wherever you are in the world and wherever that area is. And that's only a small list, and I'm sure that list could be expanded a lot. But it's maybe just the way my brain works. It's like if you really can see the economic benefits of doing it, that gives you the freedom to move on to some of the other stuff, which is where you're going to be investing in the environmental side and the social side of it, because your economic model is telling you it's not just the right thing to do, but it's the economic right thing to do.
And I think that's exactly what's going to happen, Pete. 100% bang on. And any small business owner is going to concentrate on the economics because these are not big businesses. They have troughs and peaks. As we all know, there's high seasons, there's low seasons. You try to make your money in the high season to get you through the slow season. So you can't really be turning off the tap when you are living that life, and your business is living that life. You need to have an economic mindset that makes sense for the business to survive. But I think what we'll find is, again, this sector of the industry is already in a really good spot, whether they've meant to be or not, in that a lot of the things that I think consumers are going to demand in the future are already being done by the way the majority of this sector already operates. And it is, even if you can't do everything 100% to the perfection that you would like to do it immediately, do concentrate on the things that you are innately and always have done well, which could be that local hiring, which could be the utilising of local suppliers and ensuring that money's going back into the community where you live. And I think that's probably going to be, I don't know whether I think it or I hope it, but probably a little bit of both, is that, tourism from a government level will inevitably switch to having deeper conversations with the communities where tourism exists out of necessity, and the communities themselves will start to define the type of tourism that they want to have in their particular area. Now, if you're a resident and you're a part of that community and you engage with that community and you listen to them, then you'll always be a step ahead and you'll always be in the right spot to deliver not only the type of tourism that your customer is hoping to receive, but also a type of tourism that your community is willing to offer. And so I guess old school hospitality is we receive guests from other places and we host them, and ultimately, for the best experience, we need the vibe around them from the rest of the community to also be welcoming. And I think that's going to be pretty much the main thing, is working in with your local community. I think everybody will kind of be able to understand the downside of travel from a carbon perspective in flying, but where you can really lean into is making sure that what you're doing is in line with your local community expectations, and that you're a good citizen. That you're a good citizen within your own community, and I think that will hold you in really good step. And all this stuff is around sustainability. That's all part of it. If you're working in with what the community expects, then you will inevitably be doing that in a sustainable way, whether you've got it written down as a policy or not.
Yeah, I've kind of got a live example of what you just discussed there in Scotland. And it's sort of framing for what I see happening around the world and coming. So, like many cities, like many cities around the world, Edinburgh is a very tourism-focused city. It had an absolute boom pre-pandemic. Airbnb came in as a model. A lot of people started doing Airbnb in Edinburgh, and then a lot of people started investing in Airbnb, and we ended up with a mass, particularly centred in the centre of Edinburgh, of Airbnb ownership. The industry from the hoteliers weren't happy, but they didn't really have an impact on government. They whinged a lot and they complained a lot, but that wasn't what got government to get involved. What got government involved was local residents, and local residents complaining about the amount, because they're tenement blocks and flat blocks that ended up being 5 residents and 25 Airbnbs. And it just changed. I'm just going to grab my dog again. It just changed, absolutely just changed the makeup of people's lives in the city centre, and the
vibe.
Yeah, it just changed people. The tourism industry, did we really pay, or the hospitality industry, did we really pay attention? Did we listen? No, we didn't, or we pretended to, because we didn't take any action, and it just kept churning on. So the government took action, and now if you want to, as of this week, if you want to run an Airbnb in Edinburgh within the city boundary, you have to change your property from a private residence to a commercial residence. And that is a big change. It's very difficult to do. It's expensive to do. It affects the sale price when you sell it. And in reality, it's just killed the Airbnb market because not many people will change their property from residential to commercial. Even if they want to, the chances are it will not go through, because when they put the application in, all the other residents will say, no, we don't want a commercial property in the apartment next door to us. It had a bigger kick-on effect on that because the government, and the governments are not great at getting into the detail, went, oh, we could license all self-catering in the whole of Scotland. So because of one issue in a very small 5 to 6 mile radius in Edinburgh, they've gone way over to regulation in Edinburgh. For the rest of Scotland, they've gone to a licensing scheme that isn't changing the property to commercial like in Edinburgh, but every single self-catering accommodation in Scotland now needs to be licensed. That comes with a cost, comes with inspections, comes with a lot of stuff that small hospitality owners are not used to doing or willing to do. And what we are going to see is quite a steep reduction of people coming out of the industry, particularly the people who are near retirement age, which makes up a lot of them. They'll just go, it's not worth it anymore. So that example is a case of the noise was there, the message was there, tourism listened but didn't act, and then heavy regulation came in and does what heavy regulation does in a blunt, again, taking a sledgehammer to a problem that could have been solved with something, dialogue and discussion could have been solved, but they've took a sledgehammer to it, and it's going to change the tourism industry in Scotland. That is happening around the world. I know similar things are happening in Barcelona and in Paris. We have buses being removed off the streets. So city after city is looking at changing the way they operate their city with a focus on their people who live there rather than a focus on the tourists.
It's a really tough one, Pete. And yeah, we all reflect on 2019 because it was actually, it was such a boom year. 2018, 2019, like basically everything kicked in and worked brilliantly in terms of getting mass tourists to wherever they needed to be. So, financially lucrative for, I'm sure, a lot of the listeners on Entrepreneur, probably two of the better years that they've ever had. Yet if any of them, the people listening, manage to get out and go, visit different places, it was pretty crappy out there. It was like just so hideously busy that the enjoyment factor of where you were was incredibly diminished. I was in Greece at some point during that time, and never seen it so overrun. You're literally standing in a very slow moving queue through, albeit a very lovely scenic area, just bumping along, behind hundreds and hundreds of other people. And I don't know that anybody could have been enjoying that experience. And inevitably, poor experiences also take their toll. So it's definitely a difficult one to balance. The money of 2019, great. Whether we, really truly, as a species, want to go back to that level or aspire to that again, I don't think the residents of Barcelona or Amsterdam or Venice are probably that keen to get back to those levels. And I think, as you said, a lot of those places have taken action in the time since to put as many blockers as they can to ensure that doesn't happen again. So, these are the things that all areas will come up against as they become super popular. As the middle classes of other nations start traveling en masse, which was kind of the real spur of 1819 to have the Chinese tourists and the Indian tourists and a lot of other kind of emerging economy tourists were they were out there. It was huge, and added that on to the already existing population of what we had. And in some places, it was too much. I think we need to put our hands up and say that's true.
Yeah, I think as tour operators, and I totally get it. I was always the same as an operator. I was laser focused on execution day by day, week by week, and month by month, everything measured to the utmost. But sometimes when we look out and we look to the future, and today, the pandemic was a window of something that happened. Obviously, we hope it doesn't happen again. But if we ignore what happened in the pandemic and look at the big demographics and the big trends, Well, there's going to be another X billion people coming into middle class, as you say. What happens when people move into middle class and middle class earning is they start traveling. That is it's happened time and time again. They start traveling within their own country first, then they start traveling regionally, and then they start traveling long haul internationally. So the way I look at this is I don't see travel and tourism having any issue with demand. Demand is going to be a constant and it's going to be growing. So we're in an industry that gets growth by default because of global population changes and economic changes. So demand is baked into the system at X% growth per year. It's how do we manage that growth? Now, as tour operators, particularly ones who are operating in places who are under the stress of over demand, we actually can make a big impact because we can change the experiences. We design the experiences on the ground and then retail them in many ways to the consumer. But often the consumer will buy what you put in front of them if it's put in the right content, in the right context, and with the right explanation. So tour operators are actually right at the forefront of this, of being able to redesign experiences that will make the visitors' experience different and hopefully better, and also make the residents and the people who live there's experience different.
Yeah. And what you've explained there, Pete, was basically exactly the Urban Adventures operating model for 10 years. Like our starting point was what already exists, don't do that. You know, find that your city is an amazing place filled with incredible people, awesome stories. Somewhere in there is the best of something. Go and find those best ofs that are not in the city centre, are not near the main attraction, that have an enigmatic owner that wants to tell their story and be effusive and show that hospitality, to guests that have come from afar and want to experience what they've created. And that was kind of exactly the entire ethos and mentality of the production of tours at Urban Adventures. And that's a risk to take, because it's certainly much simpler to try and take a portion of a market that you can see is flooded because there are literally thousands of people swarming the core sites of the city, versus saying, I don't want to do that. I want to be about dispersal. I want to be about helping tourism have a wider reach, and it takes longer to build those products into popularity. But I mean, along the way, I can think that our Tokyo food tour didn't go anywhere touristy. It went somewhere very untouristy, and was one of the regarded as one of the best food tours in the world by our friends at TripAdvisor. Same with our Prague beer tour. Not in the city centre, out in the burbs, a place the tourists don't really go. But guess what? They got bloody great beer out there. So 3 times best beer tour in the world, Hall of Fame, etc. It can be done, and you've got great stuff in your city that I'm sure you know about, or wherever you happen to operate. If you're not in a city, wherever you are, there's always great stuff that you can demonstrate that isn't what everyone else is doing. And I think that's what people are going to start looking for, because they want to be experience the best, but also not be in places where they're harried and that are just overrun and busy. You're on your vacation. You want to be in a spot that's relaxing and calming, but still got great experiences that you can share when you get home. And that's kind of the point of it.
Yeah, there is an economic model behind that as well. It's if we jump onto a retail site, Viator, TripAdvisor, whatever, and you look at any city and you look at all the regular tours that do take volume, there's no getting away from that. They do take volume. People make money out of them. But for many of our listeners here, entrepreneurs, they're not going to be able to build a scale business. That's just the hard fact of it. And if you go after the really popular tours, you have to build a scale business. And the tour itself, recently we had Joe Pine on here from the Experience Economy. What happens to the experience itself? It becomes a commodity, and then it becomes a competition, and then it becomes price pressure. So your price is under pressure all the time. Therefore, the only way you're addressing that is by scaling up, getting more customers. Whereas if you create unique tours, yes, they're not going to be as popular, but you have control of your price, you have control of your margin, and you can make significantly more margin with less customers rather than dealing with a lot more customers. There's always going to be someone who has the ability and the scale to deal with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers, in some case, millions of customers a year. But for most listeners to Tourpreneur, it's finding these experiences, designing these experiences that are going to be true experiences, verging on transformational experiences that can be priced at a point that the customer is willing to pay for that great experience. And it's at a point where the operator makes a living profit to allow them to reinvest in their local community, allow them to reinvest in their business and put food on the table.
Sure. Yeah, and just another, I guess, part of that is, once a tour becomes a commodity, tour guides are human people, and in general, like some of the best people I've ever met, and super creative people, and love expressing their passion for their city. But day 15 of doing the same thing on a commodity tour is really hard to express to the guests that are there, and this is their big day, experiencing whatever it happens to be, with the same amount of passion as you did on day one, because it does become monotonous yawn. And everyone now is experiencing pressures in employing all sorts of roles, but tour guides in particular. I see lots of companies out there, desperately looking for people to guide their tours. And you might get them on for a little while to do those commodity type tours, but in the end, they're going to get bored, and that's not going to be a good experience for your customer either. So there's a whole cycle here that's in play. And for us, it was always the guide basically is the experience. We used to give people a framework that they used to have to operate under, but we didn't do scripts or anything like that. It's like, you are a citizen of this city. You've got your own stories to relate about where we are right now. That's the stories that you should be telling, because they're the ones that you'll tell with passion and authenticity. And the fact that this vendor or that vendor or wherever you happen to be going is all part of the experience. The chemistry that you exude with those people is what your customers feed on, and they feel that authenticity, and that's when they feel they've really got something special in return.
So moving on, Tony, obviously a huge part of your background career was working for Intrepid and Urban Venture, kind of Intrepid, largest tour operator in the world. So just some points from you for our listeners about lessons that you can bring from the big world of tour operating, kind of scaled operation, as Intrepid was, operating in God knows how many countries around the world, to what lessons did you learn in there that you then applied when you were running your falafel shop, for example, in your small tour business?
Yeah, for sure. Look, of course, Intrepid's a big operation, and and scaling something is not easy. So, like, the process to get there is not easy, and the problems that the small operator has is just magnified within a larger operation. Like, there's no secret sauce. There might be a lot of the old duck on top of the water looking calm and serene, but even when you get to scale, doesn't mean every one of your systems is scaled alongside you. And so there's a lot of kind of backwards and forwards and manual work going on to make all that operation run smoothly. I happened to run into one of the old Intrepid guys just on the weekend, and I just had a quick chat about kind of what's going on now. And he said, and this is a person that's extremely high up, not at an operational kind of level. And I was asking, kind of what's going on there. And he's talking to me about, a guide in remote northwest Australia, which is a fairly remote part of the world, getting COVID. And that's okay, but they had a guide not too far away that they get to take over the group, and he got COVID. And so that's it, we're out. I've got a group of 12 people in a very remote part of Australia with 2 guides in isolation that can't be with the group. And these are the problems that it doesn't matter what size of your business is, like you still need to fix that problem. So look, it's as things get bigger, you do work out ways to create. Creating, I think, at scale isn't so difficult. Operating at scale is just infinite more issues. That you build a process, you build a system around them that can cope with most things, but it involves a lot more people. So I think when I started Intrepid, if there was 300 people there, I would have been surprised. By the time I left, there was 2,500 people. And so these are things that happen as things get bigger quite inevitably. And those listening to this podcast are managing people, and so managing 10 people is hard. Managing 2,500 people is a lot harder. So I guess be careful what you wish for, I guess would be one way to look at it. But in terms, I guess, practical advice, running 165 day tour cities across the world, like how do you standardize that and make it so that a unified brand and all those kind of things. All those things were difficult as well, and particularly Urban Adventures run on almost a co-op basis. So it actually took people's individual buy-in to the process to make those things occur on the ground, in a systematic way. And like anything in this world, dictating from above is you're always going to probably end up in tears. And so, if you've got people around you that you've brought into the tent, then you need to bring them into the conversation and build your processes up from the collective experience of everybody. So I guess, from an Urban Adventures point of view, we had a product formula, but it was very, it was at a very high level. So we used a formula that was called flavor, and those were the elements that we needed to see in every single tour. But how you interpreted those locally was up to you. And then how your guide on the ground then interpreted that in their own tour. As I said, it was more or less left up to hire well, get the right people out there, and encourage them to tell their own stories to build authenticity into the end product. And so that's a system. That's a system that we used. And it meant if you went on a trip in Prague and then you went on a trip in Cairo, they might not be exactly the same trip, but they're probably recognizable as Urban Adventures trips because of the authenticity of the guide. And the places that you went were off the beaten track, and you went and visited a lot of the best of things that are in that city that are not the main attractions. And so those were the kind of overarching themes that allowed us to scale and have some uniformity, but without it being overly onerous on anyone within the chain.
Yeah, from my own background and experience of having failed to scale globally, which I attempted to do, and I don't think our listeners should, who are building businesses, who are younger and dynamic, and they're looking to scale an international business. It is incredibly difficult. But the thing I found challenging wasn't so much the managing on leadership of people. I've done that all my life. But when you start operating in someone else's country, with someone else's rules, regulations, all the bureaucracy that happens, when you do that country after country after country, the amount of back-end bureaucracy and stress on your organization that has to be dealt with, which is away from the front end of looking after the guests and the guides, the great bit that everybody enjoys. It was just that chaos of the back end, making sure everything's legal for every single destination that you're in.
Bloody hard.
That to me was the killer as I was scaling up the business, and the amount of resource, both capital, human, that would suck out of the business and suck out the enjoyment of the business, because you're constantly dealing with these challenges, which I'm not saying for operators not to scale the business global, because it's a great ambition, it's a great learning journey to do, but it is incredibly difficult. And I think that's demonstrated by we haven't got many global scaled operators. We just have, and many of the ones who are, they've gone to a very digital model where they're just contracting guides on the ground and focusing on the brand retailing as one brand with contracted guys on the ground. So, I mean, Intrepid has managed it, G Adventures has managed it. There's a few that have done it, but even today, with all the advances in technology, it is still an incredibly challenging business to do.
And it's worth addressing the fact that, yes, Urban Adventures got out to 165 cities around the world, but it also crumbled.
Yeah.
It had a unsustainable business model sitting behind it that wasn't overly obvious until we got to that level of scale, just how unsustainable that business model was. So, so even when you get there, it's achieving that volume, maintaining it, and that's where the hat tip really goes to, your Explorers and your Intrepids and your G Adventures that are now 30, 40, 50-year-old companies.
Yeah.
That is some awesome endurance to overcome all the issues that you just talked about, and still not only maintain their position but grow their market share and continue to grow within their own industry. Incredible, like it is, and kind of having been in that maelstrom and trying to get there within the day tour industry. It wasn't the going up that was particularly hard, because there were a lot of willing participants, and we figured out the piece around local laws and local jurisdictions and hiring by creating businesses that were owned locally. But in the end, that was part of the business model failure. So the business would still exist had there been a different business model sitting behind it, and had Intrepid owned all those entities. But as it didn't, with so many fingers in a pie, which we all know is quite a small pie, there wasn't a way to make it work financially for all parties in the end. And, that business is now down to, I'm not sure, 35, 40 destinations, and they're all owned in-house by Intrepid, because Intrepid has set up its systems across the world where it has legal entities in all those countries where it now operates the Urban Adventures as well. So, it figured out that difficult bit that you spoke to for some destinations, but 45 is a long way off 165.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of leading on from that, the tourpreneur community is majority day operators, but we do have a big percentage of multi-day operators as well. My own background is a combination of day operating and multi-day. I totally get why we have more startups, tourpreneurs going into day tours. Now, what I'm going to say is obviously biased by my background. I'm a big fan of multi-day versus day tours for a whole host of reasons. Some of it we've already discussed. You're dealing with less customers, but you're making higher margins. You're also going deeper on the experience, but there's still very valid day tour models as well. And I love my time as a day tour operator and all the people we got to meet and introduce them to adventure. So just your thoughts on day tour, not day tours versus multi-day, but where day tours fit going forward, where multi-day fits going forward. I had a model that I loved where it was a combination of them both for a whole host of reasons. Acquiring a customer is expensive, and keeping that customer is something that tour operators do not do well on the whole. But if you have day tours and multi-day tours, suddenly you have a customer journey within your own organization that can lead that customer to being a return customer, which becomes highly profitable on your cost of acquisition.
For sure. Wow. I mean, you pretty much nailed the strategy behind Urban Adventures in that comment. That was the strategy. It was a part of the market that Intrepid didn't address. We could see it every day. So as on the ground running multi-day tours, our customers would arrive 2-3 days before the start of the first tour, and guess what they do? They'd go and do day experiences, and Intrepid didn't have any say in who they were going with, what they were doing, and also wasn't making any money out of it. So that was kind of part of it, and also just the size of the market, is obviously much larger in the day tour side. So they were kind of the two pieces that brought together the birth of Urban Adventures. combined with your other very insightful comment was you can create this customer journey within your entire business, which was a bit we failed at, and ultimately the reason for the demise of Urban Adventures was that didn't bear out at scale. That the customers who did the day journeys with Urban Adventures ultimately did not move in big enough numbers into the Intrepid multi-day business. And so, if you're looking for a single trigger point on what might have happened at Urban Adventures, that's exactly it. In terms of future opportunities, I'm actually kind of in the midst of researching, around a reasonably, I don't know if it's a new phenomenon or it's just new to me or what the case may be, but there are large groups of people, communities, if you wish, that have formed almost in an organic manner, like within Facebook, etc., private groups that have numbers in the hundreds of thousands, that are all based around people wanting to go travelling, looking for travel companions, and all that's multi-day. And the owners of those Facebook groups are like, there's an opportunity here, but I don't quite know how to grasp it. And it's not one, it's like I've identified maybe a dozen of these different groups that have huge numbers in them. So like the appetite for multi-day is massive. The demand is there. Some people have captured that demand and don't know how to connect it to supply. They don't know how to build their own supply. And I think it's a really interesting opportunity for lots of operators out there to also potentially diversify their market. Obviously, going down that path, you need to open up new marketing channels, new approaches, etc. So it does hold that level of risk. But as you said, has really great margins inside it if you get it right. There are some interesting new businesses that are opening up in the multi-day area that are doing things different to the ways that other people have, the incumbents that have done it for the last 30, 40, 50 years. So a couple that you might want to go take a look at. We Road in Italy essentially started as one of those Facebook groups with young Italians that wanted to go travelling. They have figured it out. They have built proper scalable operations that are running multiples of multi-day trips every week and doing a pretty good job of it. And they're doing things differently to the way that the older companies have done. And when I look at some of the stuff they're doing, I think, well, we would never have done that at Intrepid, but is that because we are risk averse, or have they seized an opportunity that the newer market requires? So that's probably a really good one to go have a look at. And then in the UK, there's Travamigo, which are doing something similar, but in a really digital environment of getting people, connecting them, before travel, and then sending them out as a group with a very loose itinerary, essentially just your transport and your accommodation, and then what you do when you're out there is totally up to you. And if you want to sleep in and not go and see whatever it is to see that day, well, it's your holiday, good luck. So there's lots of different models out there to have a look at that could be of interest to those that are looking at other ways that they might be able to utilize some of their already innate skills in another way.
Yeah, I think a lot of the tourpreneurs who are running day tours, maybe experienced or not experienced or just started, they're a bit intimidated by multi-day, moving from day tours into multi-day. The way I always sort of get asked people or advise people to do it is, don't just jump into running 2-week trips or 3-week trips internationally and overseas if you're a day tour operator. Look at your day tours, and can you change that day tour from a 1-day experience, half-day experience, into a 2-day experience, into a 3-day experience? But just that slight change of experience and product gives you a great learning journey, but it also opens up a huge wide range of opportunities in your economic model, because you're suddenly guiding the client pre-booking on a lot more than your experience. They're now discussing your transport, you're now discussing food, you're now discussing accommodation. All of that is an economic opportunity for the for the day tour operator if they go from 1 day to 2 days to 3 days. And it can be highly profitable just doing that, as well as getting the deeper relationship with the guest. I think there is a mindset of people think multi-day, we're doing 10-day trips or 2-week trips, whereas multi-day can be done very, very successfully in short. And it fits with the trend of people and sometimes having money but being time short. They're looking for 2 days, 3-day blast experiences, and maybe only 1 or 2 big experiences a year of 10 days. So that is one way for a community of operators to experiment, is just go from 1 day to 2 days initially. May not be for you, but from my experience, I think once you get into multi-day, you'll go down the rabbit hole, because it is a more rewarding environment, in my opinion, both from a financial perspective and from an interaction with the guest perspective, because you are going deep.
Totally in building that relationship with the customer,
Yeah.
and for your guide as well, to build a deeper relationship with your customer, which and they're an extension of your business and your brand also. I couldn't agree anymore, Pete. It's there's definite opportunities in having deeper conversations than just book now. And in the day industry, we really want to drive people to book now with the littlest amount of conversation as possible, because the resources really aren't there to do any more than that. But you are losing something in that. Okay, you got that $40-50, but what you can get from having a conversation with a customer about what they want to do can not only be financially more lucrative, but can also, definitely be a great fill-up for your brand. And they're the customers that you build that really strong relationship with, that are more likely to recommend their friends, etc., to come and do what they did with you.
Yeah, for sure. We're both getting to a certain age, which means we've been around this industry a very long time now.
Old.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the word. Yeah.
Yep.
So when I started, technology wasn't a big player in the industry. It was there, but it wasn't a big player. Now technology is a major, major player in the sector. Even small, tiny operators are now using what I class as world-class technology for a monthly fee or for free. And so technology isn't going to go away. It's going to come into this industry more and more. We're not leaders, we're followers. We follow other industries. Technology comes from other industries. What do you see, or how do you see technology impacting, particularly this small operator going forward?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's been a technological revolution already, so I guess that's kind of one part of it. The difference between 2009 and 2022 is night and day. To have your bookings online, distributed widely, with your customers being able to find you when they're sitting in their lounge room 16,000 kilometres away and make a decision to travel with you, was something that was kind of rare and not easily obtained. And 2009 is not a long time ago, so we've already gone through kind of a massive quantum shift in the way the industry works, and I think mainly for the benefit of the industry as well. But of course, there's been a cost associated with that. And I guess the idea was that the added volume would cover the cost of having the ability to market, to basically anybody, anywhere, and have them come on your trip. So, I think the trend is almost anti that at the moment. It's like, I want to get as many direct bookings as I possibly can, and therefore it's all about myself, my brand, and my own presence online. And I think obviously done the day tour side of things recently, moving into hospitality, running a restaurant. It's by most small business operators, it's done fairly poorly. And that's not a criticism necessarily of any particular person. It's just that it's quite a complex thing. It takes a lot of time. And when you've got customers that need to be led right now, or you've got a batch of 30 falafels in the fryer, well, that's probably more important than checking on the SEO status of your your nascent website, or looking through your Google listing or whatever. But these things are important, and they're only going to become more important. We see Google moving into the industry as they have other parts of travel. They want to take a clip of pretty much all of it. They'll give everyone a lick, for free for a year or two, and then there'll be a cost associated with it, and kind of that's how it goes. And again, if I kind of go back to one of the big learnings from Urban Adventures, the algorithm shift between 2018 and 2019 in a TripAdvisor was close, if not the knockout blow for the Urban Adventures business. And as I was talking earlier, that it took us a long time to realise that our business model wasn't sustainable, and that was the moment that we realised it, when we built a relationship with Viator, and a really great relationship, and followed all the rules and ticked all the boxes and crossed T's at the quickest speed that we possibly could when asked to do so, and all that was very lucrative. We got a mass of business from that company, and we sent a mass of money to them the other way. But new management came in, bought by a different company, acquired different strategy, and literally overnight that business stopped. And so that's the issue with any kind of putting your eggs in a certain technological basket. You really do need to have it, kind of quite widely spread, and understand that if you do put them all in one basket, understand that someday that might come and knock you over.
Yeah, from again using my own background and history, the advice I'd give to operators today, because of the change in the industry, because of the demands of the technology side, for basically of knowledge and ability to do something that most tourpreneurs are not really interested in doing, because they're people and they want to be guiding, they want to be fronting up, they want to be designing experiences. So all of this technological blabble that goes on in the background that is super important. The only way I can see tour operators, small tour operators, being able to deal with this going forward, it's something I didn't do, but if I was starting again, I would 100% do, is you've got to find the days of being a solo entrepreneur running it all. It's just too much. It is really too much. You're not going to get through it all, and you're just going to have a stressful life. So you're going to have to find a partner, and you're going to have a balance between a partner who's focused on business and focused on technology, and a partner who's focused on operations and the customer experience. If I was starting again, there is no way I would be able to take on all of this stuff that's happening as a new person coming into the industry. It would just be too much. I just can't see how small operators can scale. And not all operators want to scale up to be big businesses, but just to scale to being, again, good, solid, resilient, profitable businesses, you've got to have to split the responsibilities in the business, because it's too encompassing.
Couldn't agree. And I don't hold out much hope that that's going to happen, Pete, but because just the people that I know in this industry and how they've got into it, most have fallen into it. A lot of no one I know has really kind of sorted out in a really active way. They've had an interest or a passion, and they've had a past life, a past career that they've done something in that they've become disillusioned with, and they're actually looking for a lifestyle shift to indulge daily in what their passion is. And I think that works well for a while, and then it becomes a business, and then it becomes an opportunity, and it becomes, well, maybe I could be bigger, and maybe I could be better. And then now I just manage 20 people, which is probably what I did in my last job, which made me disillusioned and got out in the first place. It's kind of a well-worn path. I think, going right back even a further step, and writing down what you want from your tour business before you even start, and putting that in an envelope somewhere in a drawer. And on the days that are a bit shitty, go and open that up and have a look at it and see how well you are living the life that you wanted to live, and maybe adjusting what you're doing to get back to, to what you actually really wanted. Because I think, you can get waylaid by the opportunity, or you can get waylaid by looking at what your competitors doing and how much they're growing or whatever. But I think, by and large, the majority of people I've known who are still the best people that I've ever worked with, the most fun I've ever had, and some of the best people on the planet, have done it at the beginning because it was going to serve the life they wanted to live.
Yeah.
And it's a job, so it's not going to do that every single day, but ultimately it should do that more days than it doesn't. And when it's not, then I think that's the time to kind of stop and take note. And one way to do that is to bring in a business partner that will allow you to focus back on the enjoyable parts of the business that you love. 100% believe that. And people will look at that and go, but that's a cost. Now I'm down to 50% of what I was, that was 100%. But 100% of like a thing that's driving you crazy and that you don't really want to get to bed to, versus 50% of something you really love, to me it's no brainer which one I'd choose.
So you recently made a change, Tony, in the last few weeks, I think. So air guides, I have no idea. Storytelling, what is air guides? Tell us about your new venture.
Yeah, for sure. So first, it's not my venture. I've combined myself with a great couple, Bibi and Paul, and this is their passion, but their passion truly resonated with me when we talked about it. So their I guess main focus is on the creator side. That's where their idea came from. They believe that tourism, and particularly sustainable tourism, is best experienced through a storyteller, through somebody who has an affinity with a destination, and has an ability or a skill or something to learn for the customers. And they also have a really strong, passionate belief that these types of storytellers are professionals and should be paid like professionals. And so their kind of guiding North Star is to help people that have stories, have abilities, have an audience, and want to monetize that in tourism. That air guides can help them with all the bits that are hard about tourism to make their dreams come true and to earn a proper professional wage from doing that just through their tourism business. So that bit really resonated with me. And then it's kind of cast me into this other side of the tourism world that of course I knew it existed, but I've never really played around in it much. And that's the destination marketing side of things. And so, the job of a destination, or a good DMO, is to enable the storytellers of their region to tell those stories in an authentic way, so that the wider audience will be attracted to come and visit that destination. And so, in the new gig, basically, we're matching up amazing world-class storytellers that have their own audiences that are willing to travel with them. And we are doing the heavy lifting on the product creation, so product development. It turns into both tours, guided tours that you travel along with the storyteller, and also self-guided tours that are narrated by the storyteller, and working with destinations to make those trips a reality in the destinations that want to have them. So to me, it's like, and I think for Bibi and Paul, they probably don't want to be the biggest travel company in the world. I think they're quite happy to be the most impactful storytelling and sustainability travel company in the world. That would be a really good ambition, and that's the kind of thing that really got me into it. So it's an exciting journey, exploring a whole different side of the industry to what I have done before, but still utilising the skills that I've built over the 17 years, and particularly the ability to build product and strategize around how that product should be built and executed and marketed alongside partners.
I mean, this is the first I've heard this, Tony, but we have actually seen over the last couple of months in Tourpreneur, we've had a lot of what I call content creators become members. They're not travel professionals. These are creators. They have YouTube channels and they have stuff. They're interested in travel. They're creating. They have a following, but the conversations within the Facebook group are all about they've tried to do a tour and it's not worked, or it's been a disaster, or how do we contract with an operator so they do all the stuff we don't know about. So there is definitely something happening in that space, because we're having conversations about it. I have no idea of the scale of it. I have no idea how much of it. I get a feeling it's much bigger than I realize, and I've got a feeling that more content creators, if the hard lifting could be done for them, would be interested, because as we all know, learning to be a tour operator is challenging and a long journey, and the vast majority of great content creators are probably not wanting to do all of that because that's not their passion. So there's definitely got to be a connection there somewhere where systems can be designed to bring in this new breed. And they tend to, I was going to say young, they do tend to be young. Not all. We have a few that are old, but they do tend to be young, enthusiastic. And it's an opportunity for both sides, because it's bringing in new experiences, new products to the market, but it's also giving existing operators a new channel to be able to work with these young, enthusiastic people who are creating new content.
Totally, yeah. And in terms of process, we would talk to a storyteller about, what destination they actually have an affinity with. It's not just where you want to go, because if you're bringing people along with you, what is the story? That the trip has to have a story that sits behind it that makes sense to the traveller as well. So, for example, if I were to be a storyteller, then my story would be in Egypt, because I lived there for 5 years. I have friends there that I have made. I know places to go that certainly not on the tourist trail, and I could show people an Egypt that nobody else could show them, and give them a feeling of being integrated in with the local community that you just couldn't get on any other tour. So that would be my story. But at the moment, we're kind of working with very good photographers, so like Canon brand ambassadors, GoPro brand ambassadors, world-class chefs. It seems every world-class chef would like to get involved in travel in some way. So, and that's nice, because they're certainly passionate. They've got skills that they can share along the way, along with stories that are beneficial for the overall customer experience. And that's the stuff that we're really interested in doing. So, today I built a trip with a photographer, Mark Fitz. He's a Canon brand ambassador. There's certain tiers. He's at the top of it. And we're going to do a trip out to a beautiful place called Lady Elliot Island, where there's a certain time of the year where baby turtles hatch. And he's been out there and photographed them, and that's why he's famous, I guess. And he's going to teach other people how to take those photos at the exact right moment in the exact right place, and edit them so that they're beautifully, so that those customers go home and go, look what I did. I've learned and really grown myself in the skill that I love doing, and had an amazing time out there doing it. So, and I guess the other point that comes along with it is that we don't leave the logistics to our storytellers. So every trip that we have has a air guides expedition leader along, and the way we explain to our customers is storyteller, fun stuff. Anything that's crappy, come to me. The expedition leader. So run out of toilet paper, don't go and ask the storyteller about it. We'll fix it up over on this side. So it's a very exciting business, and I'm interested in learning myself always, and even the first 3 weeks have been an incredible learning journey, particularly on the destination marketing organisation side of things. It's a fascinating space.
Okay. Thanks very much, Tony, for your time and all your years of wisdom that you've been given to the tourpreneur community here. I hope to see you in person again sometime soon. We haven't seen each other for a while, but I hope to grab a beer with you sometime soon.
Totally, yeah. I'll be over for WTM, I think. So I'll definitely be on the island, and I hope I see you around there.
Yeah, if you're at WTM, I'll see you down there.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Look forward to catching up again soon, mate. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Tony. Cheers.